Well, one thing that nobody can ever deny is that I've always said that the Xbox Series X is a phenomenal console, and I just wish that Microsoft would have better utilized it or better taken advantage of that fact because, it really is just a console that is been pretty amazing. And with that being said, I think the fact that they came out with that one in the Series S, we can look at that and say, well, maybe that was a mistake, or maybe they shouldn't have done that. But, again, where would Xbox be if they hadn't have done that? That's something that I feel like, all of us should probably kind of take into consideration. At the very least, I feel like Microsoft has done, a good job of providing a console that is going to play things pretty well, and that's the Series X, and thankfully so, because we all remember what happened with the Xbox One. It was like, I had all these weird resolutions and things like that, and people really took advantage of that. So even right now, the fact that PlayStation Pro exists, it doesn't mean that we have seen the PlayStation 5 Pro just absolutely dominate or anything like that. So that is good enough itself, I think. And so this, I think a lot of PlayStation fans are a little bit upset about. Let's get into it. I'm the Crap Gamer. This is Crap Gamer Reviews, back with another video. Thank you so much for checking it out. I appreciate it. Like, share, subscribe. I would appreciate that as well. Certainly helps out the channel. I'm looking for, a simple like. I do daily content, so if you guys are looking for fun yet informative gaming news, look no further than right here. So, this was interesting when I saw it. Doom: The Dark Ages, the latest Doom game from id Software. Apparently, Xbox Series X delivers the smoothest experience. Yeah, according to Digital Foundry. The Doomslayer is back with a vengeance in Doom: The Dark Ages. The feudal-flavored first-person frenzy, according to Digital Foundry, promises revamped combat and revitalized visuals for current-gen consoles. In broad strokes, this is a strong technical success, but how well does the game play out across PS5, PS5 Pro, Xbox Series X, and the Xbox Series S? In all cases, users are getting a good experience, but the premium Xbox console seems to get the smoothest experience overall, even compared to the PS5 Pro, while the junior Xbox is still recognizably the same game, but with very low rendering resolutions and a haircut to some visual features. So, again, listen, I find that to be very interesting because when you look at it and you kind of see that, hey, Doom, id Tech, all that kind of stuff, very much a great looking, with the way they are able to do things. It has always been pretty amazing, right? Like, and even like that whole Bethesda type situation, like you look at Machine Games, what they were able to do with Indiana Jones, what they were able to do with like the Wolfenstein games and things like that. I think that really goes to show, and realistically, the fact that the Series X is kind of outshining the PS5 Pro here, wow, right? I mean, that's got to be pretty impressive. I know the Pro is still kind of coming into its own. I'm not going to knock the Pro too much because I think, it is a quality platform. It's just interesting to me that, as far as the Pro is concerned, we're starting to see some games that actually, look better elsewhere, which is kind of surprising. But at the very least, it kind of keeps the PlayStation 5 Pro in check. People aren't going to just like go and laugh off the Xbox Series X. I really wish that Microsoft would put more stock and belief in their own console. It's just such a shame the way that this has kind of happened, the way that it's went down. And, that's something that realistically, we're all kind of looking at and just kind of wondering, what's going to happen before too long, and at the end of the day, listen, I do think Microsoft makes some good choices, they make some bad choices. I personally think that the PlayStation 5 Pro is a really good console. Is it something that is going to be needed all the time? I don't know. We'll have to see. But again, it's like I said, the Xbox Series X being able to do all of this stuff, I think, is pretty interesting. And the fact that, Microsoft had a little bit of forethought with that, I think is really cool as well. So, again, props to Microsoft for that. Just looking at Doom specifics, the Xbox Series X delivers a pretty version of the game with its sole visual mode, looking at dynamic 1440p resolution, dropping down to 1080p in some busier scenes, variable rate shading also appears to be employed in common with other VidTech games on current gen consoles. Image quality is fine, though it can be a touch soft at times, and VRS artifacts can be unflattering. In terms of visual settings, didn't find that the game was wanting, except perhaps for the lack of ray trace reflections, which are something obviously people want through various things, but again, it just kind of is what it is at this particular point. You kind of look at these things and you go, hey, I wish that the Xbox had that, so yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. But again, it's just one of those things that you're going to have to deal with. The Series X relies on more primitive reflection tech, leaning heavily on screen space reflections, occasional harsh shadow pop-in. Performance is more or less perfect. Even intense gameplay, you're looking at a locked 60 frames without dips. It's possible the game could drop frames, of course, especially in later sections, but in the gameplay saw only a clean 60 frames per second. There do appear to be duplicate frames on camera cuts, though, in cutscenes, which is common with Artifact across the consoles. The object and camera motion blur work here to greatly enhance perception of fluidity, and comes with multiple intensity settings to suit different tastes, including the option to turn it off entirely. There are other visual tweaks here as well. Again, the Xbox Series X seems to be doing an incredible job here. I don't think anyone was particularly expecting a bad experience on Series X, but the Series S is a bit of a more concern. It's mostly a similar experience, though, just very soft one. Series S peaks at around 864p. Again, with VRS in use with dips to about 648p. In heavier scenes, expect a bit of a blurrier image with smeared appearance on fine geometry and textures at close range. Fidelity on a 4K panel can look pretty rough. The image stability is decreased as well, but overall, not too bad. Performance not as quite as good as the Series X. The great majority of the gameplay still runs at 60 frames. So, Series X, great. Series S, you get what you pay for, realistically. When you're comparing the PS5 to the Series X, image quality is similar. Most scenes look very close, so Series X is a touch sharper overall. The PS5 appears to be using a form of VRS, as it has distinctive blocky artifacts in the image. This is just interesting to see that it's really kind of, superior on the Xbox Series X, and it's really interesting to see how everything plays out. Like Microsoft a lot of people had often said that the Xbox Series X is actually the mid-gen refresh, and that's why they didn't do one. I don't know if I completely 100% buy into that. I just think that the fact that people weren't necessarily buying the Xbox itself, meant that they weren't going to take any more risks with that. So, it's kind of unfortunate to say the least. And, for me personally, I like looking at some of these things and, and hopefully Microsoft can, get some players. I don't know. It's just we used to see a lot more of these types of things in the past, where the comparisons and things like that were really dramatic. I don't think we see as many right now, even with the PS5. Then I think that there's probably a reason for that. So, again, we'll see how this all plays out. I think that is, It's one of those things that, you know, gamers are going to have to kind of decide on their own. You're not getting a bad experience if you pick up an Xbox Series X or, you know, a PS5 Pro or whatever. In fact, you know, later on they might enhance it more for the Pro. I think it really just kind of depends. But, you know, again, interesting to see how all this stuff works out. I would love to hear your guys' take. Are you guys planning to play Doom on PS5, Xbox, where else? Let me know. Rate, comment, subscribe, rack 'em up. Crap Gamer out.